Welcome to a special episode of our channel, Halloween Night. A magical time when the boundaries between this world and the next seem to blur. We see it as a night of pranks and costumes. But what happens when those pranks stop? When the knocking at the door is no longer from children? When the trick becomes a real threat? Today, we will explore 3 chilling stories, accounts that may make you rethink Halloween. Our first story begins in the peaceful isolation of a third-floor apartment. A Halloween night without big plans, just a simple Zoom call with colleagues. It started normally. Laughter, jokes about costumes, everything felt familiar. But then, a sound. A soft tap on the glass behind me. I paused, turning my head. Nothing. Just the silent night, reflecting my face. I dismissed it. Perhaps it was the wind. I returned to the call. Then Jason asked, "Is someone standing behind you?" My heart stopped. I turned again. Still nothing. Jason chuckled uncomfortably. He said, "It must just be a reflection." But I couldn't shake the feeling. The apartment felt colder. Then the knocking came again, this time sharper, like a knuckle. I muted myself, stood up, looked down at the parking lot. Empty. No one near the building. I chuckled nervously, sitting back down, but my eyes were fixed on the reflective glass. I swore I saw a shadow moving in the darkness behind, moving when I wasn't. The third knock came, this time louder, slow, deliberate. My stomach tightened. Jason stopped talking. A colleague asked if I was okay. I whispered, "Someone is knocking." No one spoke. Only the hum of the laptop fan and the faint static from the microphone. I stared at the window, seeing an outline of a hand drag slowly across the glass. It left a hazy smear, like someone breathing on it from outside. I jumped up. I approached, half expecting a prankster. But I was on the 3rd floor. There was no balcony, no ledge. Definitely no one could be outside that window. The handprint remained. "Guys," I whispered, "no one can reach my window." I turned my webcam. The screen showed a dark reflection. Then Jason yelled, "Wait, what's that?" I startled, turning back, but it was still empty. I pulled the curtain down immediately. My heart pounded. Everyone spoke over each other, telling me to call the police, but I didn't believe it. I tried to act normal, but my eyes were glued to the curtain. Every creak made me jump. 5 minutes later, the knocking returned. This time, softer, slower, as if testing if I was paying attention. My stomach clenched. I unmuted my microphone. "It's happening again," I said softly. Jason told me to pull up the curtain, but my gut told me not to. The knocking quickened. Finally, I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and yanked the curtain open. Nothing. Only my pale reflection. But then, I saw small smudges at the bottom edge of the frame. They looked like fingerprints, but pressed from the inside. I slowly backed away. My phone trembled. Colleagues called my name, their voices distant, distorted. I locked the window latch tightly. Tried to convince myself I was just tired. Jason kept talking, asking if I wanted him to stay on the call. I nodded silently. Then, from behind the curtain, I heard a soft scratch. Slow and deliberate, like a fingernail dragging across the glass. The scratching grew louder, circled the frame, then stopped. The air was still. I could hear my heart pounding. I wanted to speak, but couldn't. Then something pressed against the curtain from outside, making the fabric bulge inwards. I didn't move, gasping. Then it withdrew, slowly, silently, as if it didn't want to be seen. My friends on Zoom were still watching. Jason said, "Call someone." I shook my head, tried to think logically. Maybe there was a window ledge, a maintenance platform? But the building was old, no balcony, no fire escape on this side, a narrow alley. No one could be there. But I had to look. Against every instinct, I pulled the curtain aside. The glass was clear, no handprints, no shadows, only the reflection of my pale face. I leaned closer, exhaling, and something tapped again from the other side. 3 slow taps. I staggered back, nearly tripping over my chair. "Did you guys hear that?" I whispered. Everyone on Zoom started shouting at once. Jason yelled, "Get out!" I ran to the front door, checked the latch. It was locked. My window was locked. My mind reeled. Then the sound came again, but not from the window. It came from the hallway outside my apartment. A soft scratch, then a muffled knock. The walls seemed to close in. I crept closer, pressing my ear to the wood. A whisper, too faint to make out. I backed away, staring at the door. Jason said he was calling the police. Then I heard it again, the voice, clearer this time. It whispered my name. That broke me. I backed away from the door, grabbed my keys and ran into the bedroom, locked myself in. The knocking stopped. The silence was so profound my ears rang. Then I heard it, the faint creak of the living room window sliding open. I couldn't see, but I didn't need to. The air was colder, heavier, as if the room was breathing with me. I stayed there until I heard the police sirens. The police arrived. They said all windows were still locked from the inside, no sign of forced entry. Nothing was disturbed. They assured me it was just the wind. But the next morning, as the sunlight hit the glass, I saw something I hadn't before. A wet handprint, high up on my 3rd floor window. No one knew where it came from or how.
This story makes you wonder, is our isolation an illusion? That our tools of connection can be used against us? Now, let's move to another erosion of reality. When your home screen becomes a window. Halloween was my favorite night. No big parties, just close friends, horror movies. The chilly air outside, the smell of damp leaves, the cozy apartment. Everything was normal. We were watching our 2nd movie when the first strange thing happened. The TV flickered. Static. We thought it was a streaming service glitch. But before I could press any buttons, it cleared the static itself. The screen displayed a dark, grainy image. It looked like a security camera feed. Then I realized it was my living room. The layout, the furniture, the popcorn bowl. We froze. Mason said, "That's your house." I pressed the remote. Nothing worked. The image remained, slightly shaky, as if filmed by a hidden camera. We laughed nervously. Jenna said, "Maybe it's an Easter egg." But I knew something was wrong. Then the feed flickered, zooming in on Mason. Everyone went silent. The air grew colder. Jenna whispered, "Is someone in here right now?" No one answered. I stood up, walked closer to the TV. My heart pounded. I saw a faint movement in the upper right corner of the screen. A shadow. I backed away immediately. Mason grabbed a flashlight, sweeping it around the room. Nothing. Just the cozy space. But on the TV, the feed continued, still showing us. Then, for just a second, the camera angle tilted slightly, as if someone was moving behind it. Mason muttered a curse, ran to the front door, yanking it open. The hallway was empty, only the faint hum of the heating system. I looked back at the TV. The feed was still running. It panned slightly towards the doorway, as if to show we were out of frame. I told Mason to check the security app, but his hands were shaking too much to type the passcode. Jenna whispered, "This isn't funny anymore." Her voice was breaking. Then the feed changed. It zoomed out, showing both the living room and the hallway. And standing there, right where Mason had just been, was a dark figure. Tall, motionless. Mason turned back in, slamming the door shut. No one was out there. But when he turned around, his face was pale. We stared at the frozen figure on the screen. It didn't move. I tried to unplug the TV. The screen went dark for a moment, but when it came back on, the feed was still there. Jenna whispered, "How is that possible?" My mind raced for an explanation. Was it a hacker? A prank? But this felt different. Then the figure turned its head. The movement was slow, unnatural. It looked directly at us. Then the feed flickered, freezing. No one spoke. Then a faint static began to leak from the speakers. It wasn't continuous. It pulsed. Like breathing. I muted the TV, but the static continued, a soft, hissing rhythm. Mason yelled, "Unplug it!" I pulled the cord completely out. The screen went black and stayed that way. The silence that followed was worse. We sat there, listening to the creaks of the building. After a minute, Jenna gave a shaky laugh. "Maybe we need a break." Mason agreed. But I noticed something strange about the blank TV screen. It wasn't reflecting us. Normally, when it's off, you can see our reflections. But now, the reflection showed an empty room. I blanked, thought it was just the angle. But no, it was clear. The screen showed the same room, but empty. I stepped closer. The reflection didn't change. Still no one, even though I was standing right in front of it. My voice trembled as I called Mason and Jenna. When they arrived, the reflection changed again. Now it showed the three of us, but the movement was delayed by several seconds. Mason waved slowly. The reflection copied him, but after a pause. Jenna whispered, "It's like it's been recording us from before." The hairs on my neck stood up. I turned to check the room, just us, and that strange delayed reflection. Suddenly, the TV turned itself back on. The live feed returned, showing our living room. But we weren't in it. The sofa was empty. The lights were still on. Everything was normal, except for one thing. The front door in the feed was wide open. Mason ran to check the actual door. It was closed and locked. When he turned back, his face was pale. "It's closed here," he said, "but it's open on the screen." Jenna whispered, "What if it's showing what's about to happen?" The thought hit me so hard I couldn't respond. We just stood there, staring at the open door, waiting. After a few tense seconds, a faint figure appeared in the doorway on the screen. It looked like someone was stepping into the apartment. My stomach clenched. The figure was halfway in, stopping behind the sofa. "Turn it off," Jenna cried. But Mason couldn't move. His eyes were glued to the TV, watching the figure lean towards the camera. Then, for the first time, we saw its face, or at least something resembling a face. It looked eerily like me. The same clothes, the same expression. It stared into the camera for a few seconds, then slowly turned its head towards the real TV. That's when the screen flickered violently, distorting both versions of the room into static and darkness. Mason yanked the plug from the wall again. This time, the TV went completely black. We stood there, barely breathing. No one said a word for several minutes. When we were calm enough to move, we packed up and left the apartment. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I returned. Daylight made everything seem normal again, until I looked at the TV.
It was still unplugged, but the screen wasn't black. It showed a faint, frozen image. 3 people on the sofa, looking straight at the camera, and one of them was smiling. What's scarier than being watched? Is it seeing your own future reflected on a screen? Or seeing a distorted version of yourself staring back? Now, let's move to our third story, an invitation, a promise of a fright. Halloween was always different where I grew up. Not about parties, more about nostalgia, old memories, and the thrill of pretending something could actually scare you. Ryan and I had that tradition every year, picking horror movies, laughing at the effects, trying to scare each other. Last Halloween started that way. Ryan was scrolling on his phone, looking for movies. He chuckled. I'd sell my soul for a real scare. I laughed. Be careful what you wish for. He laughed. Hope something actually answers. Just then, the candle flickered. He chuckled. See, even the universe wants to play. That was the last normal moment. After a few movies, Ryan went into the kitchen. I heard a muffled giggle. Ryan's voice, but not quite right. Quieter, slower, like he was talking to someone else. I called out to him. No answer. The house felt wrong. I walked into the kitchen. The lights were off. His phone was on the counter. Messages open. The last message wasn't to me. It was to an unsaved number. Okay, I'm in. What do I do? I thought it was a prank, but when I called him again, I heard a sound from the backyard, rhythmic, like footsteps on wet grass. I peeked through the curtain. The motion sensor light came on. I saw Ryan, the same hoodie, the same posture, but he wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the house, head tilted slightly. I tapped on the glass, called his name.
no reaction. I blinked, the light went off, he was gone. I went out into the backyard. The air was cold. Ryan? Nothing. Just the rustle of dry leaves. I pulled out my phone to text him, but before I could type, I received a message from his number. You shouldn't look for me. My hands went cold. I turned around. The house looked too dark. I stepped inside, locking the back door. I called his phone. It rang from the kitchen. His phone was still there. A notification from an unknown app. The icon was a plain black circle. Offer accepted. I tried to open it. It froze. A shiver ran down my spine. The air in the house suddenly grew colder. I decided to call his parents, but before I could dial, a soft knock echoed from the front door. Slow, steady, 3 times. I froze, staring at the door, not moving, not speaking. After a few seconds, the knocking came again, louder this time.
My instinct told me to look through the peephole, but it felt like that's what it wanted me to do. I backed away slowly, whispering, "It's just someone playing a prank. It has to be." The third knock was so loud, it knocked a picture frame off the wall. My heart pounded. I ran for my flashlight, shining it towards the door from across the room. The light caught a shape. A head, tilted just like Ryan's had been in the backyard, through the frosted glass. I stopped breathing. The doorknob shifted slightly, enough for the door to creak, then silence. I waited for footsteps. None came. I stood there for almost a minute before I dared to look through the peephole. Nothing. The porch was empty. I turned back to the kitchen to grab my keys, but the TV in the living room suddenly turned itself on. The screen was initially static, then it cut to what looked like live footage from inside my house. It showed me, standing right there, staring at the TV. I froze completely. The angle was slightly tilted from beneath the stairs. My heart pounded. I turned in that direction. The small alcove near the stairs leading to the basement. Only darkness. I took a few steps back, whispering, "Ryan, if that's you, stop." No response. Only the faint hum of the TV behind me. I knelt, shining my flashlight into the alcove. My light caught something. A reflection. A lens. There was a hidden camera there. I gasped. I crawled towards it to pull it out, but before my fingers reached it, my flashlight beam began to flicker and died. Then, from the darkness, I heard breathing. Slow, raspy, and very close. I stumbled back, trying to stand. "Who's down there?" I yelled. The breathing stopped. Then, the basement door opened a few inches. I didn't stay to find out. I ran. I ran to the front door, flung it open, and burst outside. The air was freezing. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the street. When I turned to look, the lights in my house were back on. All of them. And in one of them, the living room window, I saw someone. It was Ryan, or at least something that looked like him. Stiff posture, expressionless face, and his hands were pressed flat against the glass,
staring at me. I called the police. They arrived immediately, searched the house, found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no hidden cameras. Only the TV was still on, still showing the same grainy live feed. But now the frame was empty. Ryan was gone. His parents said they hadn't seen him since Halloween night. His car was still in the garage. And that strange black app? It vanished from his phone as soon as they tried to open it. Sometimes, when I'm scrolling on my phone late at night, the screen flickers for a split second.
I see something, like the reflection of a dark room behind me, always too fast to be sure. But every Halloween since then, I get a message from his number. The same 3 words every time. It's your turn. 3 stories, 3 experiences that shattered the boundary between prank and horror. We might laugh, but that line is terrifyingly thin. What we consider safe, familiar, can be transformed in an instant. So, this Halloween, as you partake in the festivities, ask yourself, are you inviting something in? Something that isn't just playing games. If you found these stories chilling, please like, share, and subscribe. And let us know in the comments, have you ever experienced anything strange on Halloween?